The human walked into the massive research complex, feeling small and out of place. Towering walls of steel and glass reflected the bright lights above. The hallway was wide, spotless, and filled with creatures of all shapes and sizes, moving quickly as if they had important work to do. Some had 6 arms, others floated a few inches above the ground. Humans were rare here and most aliens barely looked at him. He felt invisible, but he liked it that way. He came only to fix a small problem with the building's energy system. It was routine work, nothing special, nothing dangerous. He reached the security checkpoint. A group of officers waited, their forms rigid and precise. They had long, thin faces with eyes that could see in complete darkness. One of them stepped forward and spoke in a calm voice. "Your DNA must be scanned before entry. Standard procedure." The human nodded. He had learned long ago that rules in alien buildings were serious. No one could skip them. He stepped into the scanning chamber, a small room with soft humming lights. A scanner above his head glowed, and a gentle mist spread across the floor. The human stayed still. He was used to tests. He had passed medical checks, safety scans, and security clearances many times. This was no different. The scanner's lights changed colors, moving from blue to green, then red, and finally a steady gold. The human did not understand the colors. He only knew they meant the process was working. He smiled slightly, feeling proud that humans were so careful and cooperative. The machine beeped and paused. Then it beeped again, louder this time. A panel on the side flashed. The human blinked. The officers outside shifted nervously. One tapped a small device on his wrist, then looked at the panel again. The human thought maybe something was wrong with the machine. He stepped out of the scanner, expecting a friendly nod or a simple "all clear." Instead, one of the officers raised his hand and spoke into a device, his voice calm but firm. "Evacuate the building. Full evacuation. Now." The human froze. "Wait," he said. "I didn't." The officer shook his head politely but did not answer. Behind him, the doors opened automatically. A loud alarm started to hum softly, not dangerous but urgent. The human watched as scientists, engineers, and other workers looked at each other in confusion. No one shouted or ran. They moved quickly like ants leaving a nest, carrying only the items they could grab in seconds. The human tried to understand. He was just a technician. He was here to fix a light panel in the energy hub. Why was everyone leaving? He walked toward the exit, but another officer stepped in front of him. "Stay here," the officer said. "Do not move." The human frowned. He felt a mix of curiosity and nervousness. He wanted to ask questions, but the officer's calm authority made him stop. Around him, the hallway emptied rapidly. Machines hummed and shut down automatically. Screens went black. Doors closed behind the last of the evacuating workers. The building was almost silent, except for the quiet buzz of the lights and the soft alarm. He looked at the scanner again. Its lights were still steady gold, but now a small panel blinked red. He stepped closer, reading symbols he did not understand. Then a calm voice came from the machine, not loud but clear. "DNA anomaly detected. Initiating evacuation protocol." The human blinked. "Anomaly?" he whispered to himself. He had never heard this word used for a human. He had no special abilities, no weapons, no history anyone in this building would know about. He felt a strange thrill mixed with fear. The officer spoke again. "Do not worry. You are safe. Just remain here. We will handle everything." The human nodded slowly. He was confused but trusted them. He had learned that in alien worlds, following instructions kept humans alive. He sat on a small bench near the scanner. He looked at the empty hallway and thought about how strange this day had become. One moment he was fixing a simple panel. The next, the entire building was cleared because of him. He felt small, but for the first time he also felt important. Minutes passed. The human did not move. He watched the lights change and the soft hum of the machines. He wondered what the scanner had found in his DNA that caused such a reaction. He had never been sick, never had any accidents, never done anything dangerous. Yet something in his genes had made the building empty itself. He smiled faintly, imagining the stories the evacuated workers would tell. No one would believe that a simple human had caused such a panic. But he knew it was true. The human leaned back and relaxed slightly. The building was quiet. The officers stayed near the doors, alert but calm. The scanners hummed softly. The human realized that, in this strange galaxy, even an ordinary human could change everything without even trying. For the first time, he understood that humans were not just small or weak. They could be surprising even without knowing it. And today, his presence alone had made everyone notice. The human sat on the bench, his hands folded, staring at the empty hallway. The alarm hummed quietly and the lights above flickered softly. He tried to understand what was happening, but nothing made sense. He had been scanned before in human facilities, and nothing unusual had ever happened. Why did this scanner in this alien building react this way? He had no answers. The officers whispered among themselves, their voices low and serious. They glanced at small panels in their hands and tapped buttons with precision. The human could not read their language, but their expressions told him it was serious. One officer stepped closer and spoke slowly. "Your DNA, it does not match any known classification." The human frowned. "What does that mean?" he asked, unsure if the officer would answer. The officer shook his head. "It is impossible. We have never seen this before." The scanner hummed again and displayed new data. Symbols and codes moved across the screen faster than the human could follow. The officers watched the numbers and shook their heads. The human tried to peek at the panel, but the symbols were strange, almost alive. One of the officers pressed a red button on a nearby console. A soft voice came from the system. "Class origin entity detected. Immediate evacuation protocol authorized." The human blinked. He had no idea what class origin entity meant. He had never heard it before, and yet it seemed to cause fear. One of the officers glanced at him carefully. "Do you understand what this is?" The human shook his head slowly. "No. I'm just a technician. I fix things. I'm not dangerous." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "We know. You are not harmful intentionally. But your DNA, it is ancient. It is unique. It triggers safety protocols designed for catastrophic anomalies." The human's stomach tightened. Ancient? Unique? Catastrophic? He had no idea what any of it meant. The building remained empty, silent except for the faint hum of machinery. Even the air felt still, as if it was holding its breath. The human looked at the scanner again. The gold light that had stayed steady now pulsed slowly. The soft red warning on the panel blinked faster. The officer beside him whispered something into a device. Moments later, more information appeared on the panel. The human leaned closer, trying to read the shapes. They moved too fast, but he caught a few words he could understand. Legendary, adaptive, failsafe. The human froze. Legendary? Adaptive? Failsafe? These words sounded important, but he did not understand their meaning. The officer saw his confusion and smiled faintly. Humans were not expected to be scanned. Not here. Not now. Your DNA carries markers long thought lost. We believed such traits existed only in history, in stories, in myths. The human laughed nervously. "I'm not a myth. I'm just me." The officer shook his head slowly. "That is exactly why the system reacted. It cannot classify you. It does not know what you are. That is dangerous." He did not feel dangerous. He had never fought anyone, never had power, never done anything extraordinary. Yet somehow his presence in this building had made everyone leave. He felt a mix of fear and curiosity. He wanted to know what the system had seen, what made it react so strongly. The officer spoke again. "We must keep you here until the scans finish and the protocol ends. It may take time. You are safe, but your existence is a shock to the galaxy's systems." The human looked around the empty hallway. Machines powered down automatically. Doors closed with a soft hiss. The hum of ventilation was louder than any other sound. He felt very small, yet for the first time he also felt important. Something about him was more than ordinary, more than human. Yet he did not know what. He had only come to fix a panel, and now he was the reason an entire building had emptied itself. Minutes passed, then hours. The human watched the officers monitor the scanner constantly. Panels flashed with new symbols. The soft red warning never stopped blinking. He realized that the system treated him as something that could not be ignored, something that could change everything if activated. The thought was strange. Humans were small, fragile, simple compared to the aliens around him. Yet here, his DNA had forced a reaction the galaxy had not planned for. He tried to speak to the officers again. "Why me? Why my DNA?" One officer crouched down slightly to meet his eyes. "Because humans carry traits lost to history. Traits designed to survive, to adapt, to endure. We believe they were gone. Your presence proves they are not." The human swallowed. He did not understand all the words, but he felt the weight of them. He had never thought of himself as important. He had never believed humans could hold power that even the galaxy feared. The scanner pulsed again, golden light flowing over him. The soft alarm continued, gentle but urgent. He felt a strange calm settle over him. Even though everyone had left, even though the building was silent, he realized he was part of something bigger. Something ancient. Something unexpected. And for the first time he understood that being human was more than just being small. It could be something extraordinary even if he had no idea why. He sat back, hands on his knees, staring at the glowing scanner. Outside, the empty hallways reflected the lights like mirrors. He was alone but not afraid. Something about him had changed the day, had changed the building, had changed everyone's perception. He did not know what would happen next. He only knew that the scanner had seen something in him the galaxy had not expected, and that was enough to make even the most advanced systems pause in awe. The human stayed on the bench, watching the empty hallway. He had never seen anything like it. The usual busy hum of the research complex was gone. No footsteps, no chatter, no machines running at full speed. Only a soft alarm filled the air. It was strange, almost peaceful, but he knew something serious was happening. The officers around him did not rush or panic, but they moved quickly, checking panels and whispering into small devices. Their calmness was different from the hurried humans he knew. These aliens were always precise, even in emergencies. He tried to stand, but an officer gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Please remain here," the officer said. "It is safest for you." The human nodded. He was confused but trusted them. He had learned that in alien worlds, rules were more important than explanations. He stayed seated and watched as the building continued its quiet evacuation. Doors slid open automatically and workers filed out, carrying only what they could in their hands. Not one person argued, not one person hesitated. The human realized this was not chaos, it was controlled, careful panic. From where he sat, he could see a small group of engineers leaving. They glanced back nervously but did not approach him. He wanted to shout, to explain that he was harmless, that he was just a technician, but the officer's calm authority kept him silent. He felt small, almost invisible, but also oddly important. His presence had caused all this. The thought made him uneasy. He had never imagined that being human could trigger such a response. The officers moved around him like shadows, checking consoles and speaking softly into their devices. Occasionally, one would glance at the human, eyes wide yet respectful. They did not see him as a threat, not really. They saw him as unusual. Their actions were careful, almost protective. The human wondered if he should leave, run, or help, but something told him this was not a moment for action. He had to wait, to observe, to understand. A soft voice came from the scanner beside him. "Evacuation protocol in progress. All personnel cleared." The human stared at the glowing screen. All personnel? That included everyone except him. He was alone in the hallway, surrounded by empty rooms and silent machinery. It was strange to be the only person left in a building that normally held hundreds. He felt a shiver run down his spine. Not from fear but from curiosity. What did the system see in him that caused all this? He remembered the officer's words about his DNA being unique and ancient. Humans were not considered powerful, not compared to the aliens around him. Yet here, his presence had forced an entire building to clear out. No one attacked, no one raised weapons, no one yelled. The panic was quiet, controlled, precise. The human realized that this was a kind of respect, or maybe fear, that he had never experienced before. His small human body had somehow triggered a reaction meant for something far greater. The lights above shifted softly, reflecting off the polished floors. The hum of ventilation was steady, almost calming. Machines powered down, systems paused, and doors slid shut automatically. The human watched it all, fascinated. He had never felt so important, and yet he had done nothing. He had only walked into the building, followed the rules, and let the scanner do its work. Everything else had happened because of him, without his choice or action. One officer crouched beside him and spoke quietly. "Remain calm. You are safe. The system reacts to your presence, not to your intent. No harm will come to you." The human nodded. He tried to imagine the building filled with hundreds of people, all working as if nothing were wrong. The contrast was strange. How empty, how quiet, how different the world could feel when a single human's DNA caused the galaxy's systems to act. Minutes turned into what felt like hours. The human stayed seated, hands folded, watching the empty corridors. Occasionally, a robot moved past, performing tasks automatically, but there were no people, no noise. The building itself seemed to breathe, alive with systems running just enough to maintain order. The human realized that this kind of panic, without violence, without chaos, was something he had never seen. The aliens respected order, even in emergency. He looked at the officers again. They moved silently, checking panels, whispering into devices. They did not treat him like a prisoner. They treated him like a mystery, something fragile yet extraordinary. The human felt a strange pride. He was small, weak, ordinary in most ways. Yet today the building recognized him as more. He did not understand why, but he knew he was at the center of something bigger than himself. As the hours passed, the human leaned back and let the calm of the building settle over him. The evacuation continued quietly outside his sight. He understood now that this was not fear of violence. It was fear of the unknown, of something the galaxy had never encountered before. And that unknown was him. A simple human, sitting quietly, while the entire complex cleared itself without a single harsh word, without a single conflict, without a single drop of blood. For the first time he felt the true meaning of being human in this galaxy. Not as a weak species, not as a minor participant, but as something unexpected, something capable of changing the world simply by existing. He did not yet know the full story, but he knew one thing. His presence alone had caused the galaxy to pause, to act, and to respect what it did not fully understand. The human sat quietly as the officers continued to monitor the scanner. The building was still empty, the soft alarm humming, and machines powered down to minimal levels. He felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Everything around him acted as if he were dangerous, but he had no idea why. He was just a human, just a technician, just someone who had come to fix a panel. And yet, the building's systems treated him as if he held the fate of the galaxy in his hands. One of the senior officers finally stepped forward. He was taller than the others, with long silver limbs that shimmered faintly in the light. He carried a small tablet and moved with careful precision. He looked at the human with a calm, serious expression. "We need to explain something to you," he said. "Something the galaxy has never revealed to humans before." The human blinked. "Explain what?" he asked. The officer gestured for him to follow, and the human rose carefully, his legs stiff from sitting. They moved to a small chamber behind the scanners, a room filled with holographic panels and historical records. The human looked around, amazed. He had never seen so much information, so many layers of data. The officer tapped a few symbols on his tablet, and images appeared in the air. Stars, planets, ancient civilizations, and long-lost worlds. "Look," the officer said. "Long ago humans were not like you think. You were not weak. You were survivors of threats that wiped out entire civilizations. Your ancestors carried something special, something we thought was gone forever." The human frowned. "I don't understand. We were just humans. We worked, we built things, we survived. That's all." The officer shook his head. "No. Humans were designed to survive. To adapt. To endure. Even in situations that destroyed entire planets. Your DNA carries hidden traits, dormant traits that activate only when certain conditions are met. That is what the scanner detected. That is why the building evacuated itself." The human's stomach tightened. "Dormant traits? Like superpowers?" The officer smiled faintly. "Not powers in the way you imagine. More like survival mechanisms. Adaptations that respond to extreme threats. We call them fail-safe traits. Your kind carries them quietly, unknowingly. That is why the system reacted. It recognized something in you that it did not understand, something powerful, ancient, and unique." The human looked down at his hands, flexing his fingers. He had never felt special before. He had never thought of himself as capable of changing anything on a galactic scale. And yet, the evidence was clear. The building, the officers, even the machines themselves, had responded as if he were more than human. He swallowed hard. "So, I'm not dangerous?" he asked. The officer shook his head. "No. Not to others. But you are extraordinary in a way the galaxy cannot ignore. You were never meant to be scanned. That is why the reaction was so extreme." Images in the air shifted. He saw humans from centuries ago, moving through disasters, surviving floods, plagues, and wars that ended entire worlds. The officer's voice continued. "Other civilizations believed humans were ordinary. Weak, small, minor. They were wrong. Humans are quiet survivors, engineered by history itself to endure when everything else fails. That is why the galaxy fears what it cannot understand about you." The human's mind raced. He had never thought of humanity in that way. To him, humans were just people, working, laughing, building, surviving. But now he saw a larger picture. Humans were more than simple workers or explorers. They carried history, survival, and endurance in their very genes. And those traits were powerful enough to make even the most advanced systems pause, evacuate, and respond carefully. The officer stepped closer. "We kept this hidden for generations. Humans were underestimated intentionally. It was safer for the galaxy. But you proved that even a single human can trigger something beyond expectation. Your presence activated the protocols designed for rarest events in the galaxy's history. That is not danger. That is recognition. Recognition of a species that refuses to be forgotten. The human looked at the holographic stars and planets, feeling small yet important at the same time. He realized that he had never been ordinary. He had never understood that humans, quiet and unassuming, could hold such strength inside them. It was not strength of weapon or power, but of survival, of adaptation, of resilience. The galaxy had underestimated them for centuries, and now he was the proof that humans were far more than anyone expected. He sat back slowly, trying to absorb everything. The building remained empty, silent, but he no longer felt fear. He felt awe. His DNA had awakened attention, curiosity, and respect. For the first time, he understood that humans were not simply part of the galaxy. They were a secret force hidden in plain sight, survivors of history, carriers of traits that could endure anything. The officer watched him carefully. Do not worry about what comes next. The galaxy will adjust slowly. Your presence has changed understanding, but you are safe. That is the nature of humans, silent, hidden, and extraordinary. The human nodded. He did not fully understand yet, but he knew one thing. Humans were not ordinary. They were special, quietly powerful, and capable of surprising the galaxy in ways no one had expected. And today he was living proof. The human walked slowly through the empty hallways of the research complex. The alarm had stopped, the soft hum of machinery returned, and lights flickered back to normal. Workers had been allowed to return, but the building still felt different. It was quieter, calmer, as if it had remembered something important. The human felt a strange pride, though he could not explain it. He had done nothing extraordinary, and yet the entire building had responded to him. He realized that sometimes, being human meant more than anyone could see. The senior officer met him at the entrance to the main hall. "You may leave now," he said. "The evacuation is over. Everything is safe. But know this, your presence today has changed how the galaxy will see humans forever." The human nodded slowly. He had always thought of himself as small, ordinary, nothing special. But now he understood that humans carried quiet power. Not loud, not aggressive, not obvious. But real. Deep, hidden, and strong in ways the galaxy had never expected. As he stepped into the main hall, he saw workers returning. Some glanced at him with curious eyes. He smiled politely. They had no idea why the building had been evacuated, and he had no intention of telling them. He did not need recognition. Humans were not like other species in the galaxy. They did not seek praise or control. Their power was in endurance, adaptability, and the ability to survive against all odds. That was the quiet strength the galaxy had underestimated. The officers gathered near the scanner, discussing the results in low voices. The human overheard bits of their conversation. Words like ancient traits, adaptive DNA, and survival failsafe floated in the air. The human shook his head with a small laugh. He still did not understand all the details, but he understood the meaning. Humans were more than they appeared. They could endure, adapt, and influence events simply by existing. Today had proved it. He walked toward the exit of the building, passing rows of silent, powerful machines. For years, humans had been considered minor players in the galaxy. Others had assumed that strength came only from weapons, fleets, or magic-like powers. But humans had something different. They had quiet endurance, clever minds, and the ability to survive against impossible odds. And sometimes that was enough to make the galaxy pause, evacuate, and pay attention. Outside, the sunlight reflected off the city's glass towers. Aliens moved quickly through the streets, unaware of what had happened inside the building. The human felt calm. He had not sought power or glory. He had not tried to impress anyone. And yet, today, his simple existence had reminded the galaxy that humans were not weak. They were clever, resilient, and full of surprises. The human smiled. Perhaps the galaxy had learned something it would not soon forget. He remembered the officer's words about humans being secret survivors of history. He thought of his ancestors, of all the small humans who had lived quietly, endured hardships, and carried on. They had built homes, invented tools, explored worlds, and survived disasters that might have destroyed others. They had never needed recognition because their strength was hidden, patient, and enduring. And now that hidden power had been recognized, not with violence, not with fear, but with careful respect. The human walked down the street, feeling light and free. He realized that humans did not need to prove themselves with weapons or loud displays. Their power was in being human, Clever, persistent, adaptable, and able to change situations quietly. He thought of the empty hallways, the calm officers, and the machines that had responded to him. All of it was proof that the galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. As he left the building and returned to his simple tasks, he understood something important. Humans were not ordinary. They did not have to be. Their quiet strength, their ability to survive and adapt, made them extraordinary. And that strength would continue even when no one noticed. Today he had been a reminder. Tomorrow, others would carry that same quiet power into worlds the galaxy had never imagined. He smiled as he fixed the last panel in the complex. Small actions, simple work, patience, and endurance, that was humanity's gift. No one would cheer, no one would announce it in the stars, but the galaxy had learned a lesson it would not forget. Humans were not minor. Humans were not weak. Humans were quietly powerful, and that power could change the course of history without a single fight, without a single shout, simply by being themselves. And as the human walked out into the busy city, blending into the crowd, he felt proud. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because being human had proven itself today. The galaxy had paused, respected, and adapted to him. And he knew, quietly, that humans would continue to survive, adapt, and rise in ways no one had ever expected. He had seen it firsthand. Humanity's quiet power was real, unstoppable, and waiting always for the right moment to be noticed.